Welcome back to OverTakes, guys. This is Misfit. Today, we're going to be talking the Apac Countdown Cup Tournament. But first, I'd like to thank everybody out there for joining me. Everybody on YouTube, thank you very much. I appreciate all of the likes, subscribes, all the conversations we've been having about the Overwatch League. If you're new, please hit a like, hit a subscribe, hit that alert bell. We do Overwatch League content 3 to 5 times a week, depending on what's going on. We got a lot of stuff going on this week, so we're going to have a bunch of stuff coming up for you. Plus, I got some other little video things that I'm trying. So, let's dive into this. Apac Countdown Cup Tournament. This one was a lot more one-sided, just from one team. Overall impressions of the Apac side of the tournament. Shanghai is head and shoulders above every team in this region. They prove time and time again. Coaching is phenomenal. Moon is doing a great job with this team. Their personnel is by far the best in the region. New York is really good, but they're not quite on the level of Shanghai right now. Let's just be honest with this. Yeah, it's fun to watch these tournaments with 7 teams. A lot of people are saying APAC is better than NA. I think both have their strengths and weaknesses. There's less teams, so there's less chance for shit and mediocrity. So, and we also have New York in here, who would most likely be normally in NA. They would be somewhere in the top to middle, probably somewhere around Florida and Atlanta, below those top 3 teams. Paris is the bottom of the top 3. The whole scenario with that. But in this region, it's, especially in this tournament, the way it played out, Shanghai's the best. There's some disappointing performances in this one too. Okay, so let's go over the first round. Obviously, Shanghai with the bye. New York beats Guangzhou. Guangzhou made a hell of an effort to come back and try and reverse sweep this. New York was just too much for them on a lot of occasions. We saw some different things from New York. We saw Libero on Brigida. Saw a little bit last week of that too, but I'm not the biggest fan of that. Guangzhou, I thought they were going to win this. I just thought they were playing better as a team. They were more cohesive. They had a lot more things going on positively. New York was kind of middling, trying to figure out where they are. There were some things that New York does. Haxall and Jonak sometimes are just way too aggressive. Mono dies a lot. I don't know if it's a support issue with that. Jonak's being too aggressive, therefore he's not taking care of Mono. Or Animo is trying to take care of Jonak. It's this whole flow of the way bad play works with them. But overall, New York did play better, and it's good to see. It felt weird saying New York was like a mediocre team for the last little bit. I mean, last year they had their moments in GOATs where they were just not good. In fact, they started doing monkey goats and all kinds of other stuff. I think they're starting to right the ship. Are they on Shanghai's level? No. But they are better than Guangzhou right now, and they proved it in this match. Next match, we had Hangzhou beat Seoul. They had to come back and reverse sweep them. Seoul cannot finish a match. They are probably the worst team in this region right now. London is vying for that. They both haven't won in, I think since the summer showdown. Seoul hasn't won since July 4th. They're just terrible right now. And their coaching staff is continually there. They just do the same things every week that we go over all the time. Hangzhou took advantage of that after they figured out what they were doing, because Seoul rolled them in the first 2 maps. But Hangzhou came out, adjusted, and this is one of the things with Seoul, I think, with me. There's no adjustments. Hangzhou came out and adjusted and reverse swept them. Seoul did nothing to change their gameplay. In my opinion, from watching it. It just did not look good. It was not a good look, and it hasn't been for Seoul since the May Melee, where they should have beaten the Shanghai Dragons. The next match, we got that one right. We got the last match right too. I said Hangzhou was going to win. I thought they would beat them rather handily, but they had to come back and do it. Chengdu did exactly what we thought they were going to do. They came out, they confused London. London has dropped off the table. I saw them as a team that was kind of on the rise, getting their footing, but they have just kind of taken a step back. It's kind of disconcerting. because they have some players on this team that are good. They just can't manage to get it together. Chengdu did some different stuff, which I'm not a fan of, and it's going to come to play in a second when we talk about the next match. Prove that they're not the bottom team right now in this region. There are things that they need to do. The next match... Okay, so let's move to the semis. Shanghai plays New York. They absolutely demolish New York. It wasn't even funny. It was just Shanghai on every roll just utterly destroyed them. They're head and shoulders above the rest, and a lot of it, you can say, if you go down the rosters, you're like, okay, Jonak and Animo, Li Zhegong and Luffy. You might give it to New York because of the Jonak factor and Animo. All right. Fearless and Void. It's a wash because you might think Mono's better than Fearless. Void's better than Bianca, which I like the Bianca look, but let's be honest, Void's an MVP candidate. DPS, you gotta go Shanghai. You're like, all right, they're kind of close. The one factor, and when we discussed San Francisco, the one factor is the coaching on Shanghai is better than the coaching on New York right now. They know what to do. They have them on this, as Jaws calls it, flowchart Overwatch. Shanghai is perfect at that. When X happens, we do this, we do this. It plays out perfectly every time. And then you throw in factors like Fleta and Lip just being dominant, and also Fearless being dominant. Their whole team, other than their supports, which are really good in this match, and New York gave them a bone. They put Libero on Brigitte for some of these maps. Li Zhegong is way better and Luffy than if you throw the combo of Bianca. If you throw the combo of Libero and Jonak. Libero, who played, in GOATS, he played some Brigitte. Some teams have been doing this in the last week. They've been throwing, all right, it worked with Mirror, I guess, against Toronto, where they had him playing in every role. I understand Brigitte's a little bit different playstyle, and a lot of the guys with experience on Brigitte are the guys that were DPS players that had to play her in GOATS. But I would rather have, it just, for me, it's not optimal. Because if you really think about it in the course, yeah, all right, you haven't seen a lot of Libero, but these guys have been grinding, Genji or other things, and then you have to flip the narrative of what you're playing in ranked and whatever else in scrims, and you have to go into a totally different mindset. That aside, Shanghai, just unbelievable. Some of the plays like Lip, Li Zhegong, Fleta, they're just playing at a level above everybody else. And then you add in the surprise factor, the one factor that at the beginning of the year with Shanghai was main tank. Stand 1 was the main tank, and they brought Fearless back in. That was the one question, and Fearless has been playing ungodly. So he even, in my mind, should be considered in the MVP race, at least for Shanghai. He's just playing phenomenal right now, especially when you get him on the monkey. He's just incredible. The other match, Hangzhou beats Chengdu. Now, this is what we wanted to talk about. Now, Chengdu, they've been doing the ball thing, and yeah, it was during a hero pool where we did not have Orisa. We didn't see Orisa, but they're playing A-Ting. Okay, all right, yeah, so you want to run meta, I guess, but why not get on the ship that brought you there, man? Just, or whatever the cliche is you want to use. If it ain't broke, don't fix it. Just play Amheng on ball. People can't handle it. It's a reasonable dive tank, especially the way these teams are playing Sombra. All right, you might not want to play him against Sombra because he's just a potato if he gets hacked. But is Amon going to get hacked that much? He's that good on ball. Just run ball. Run what you're good at. And they got smoked in this because they didn't run what they were good at. They were trying meta stuff. It doesn't work with them. They just need to be the team that does the different. And they're comfortable playing that. It's a frenetic play style that sometimes teams try copy that can't. That's when you win. You make the Chengdu trap, as I call it. The teams that lose to them are the teams that fall into the trap. Hangzhou did a couple weeks ago. You can't be doing things that are successful, in my mind, this is. Or, even in anything. You're doing something that's successful and you change it just to change it. It's this outthinking of, well, they think we're going to do this, so we're going to do this to try and make them think that, you screw the pooch on the whole thing and lose. Which is what they did. Hangzhou came out and played good. Architect was fantastic. Gushui, been playing great. But I would have liked to have seen Chengdu do their thing. Plus, it's sad watching them. Let's be honest. It's sad watching them play meta. And not in the way, in the inferior gameplay, but just in the, you have this expectation of this, oh yeah, here we go, Chengdu, Amen, gonna roll out, oh, he's playing Orisa. Fuck. It's that. Hangzhou took care of business. We had them in this too, and we got the final right. We just had Guangzhou beating New York. I did way better picking the Asia region than the NA region, because those middle teams in the NA just screw my brain. You want these teams to be good, and they're not. I mean, yeah, you can figure the top 4 were going to be there in the end. Most people had that, but it's those games in the middle there. Seoul, is bad. London is whatever they are, and they can't handle anything that's not thrown directly at them currently, bone-wise. They're playing bad. They're in that Vancouver, thought they were going to be good, nope, kind of vibe with them. The final. Let's talk this match for a minute. There really isn't a lot to talk about other than how dominant the Dragons were in this. I mean, Hangzhou kind of made it close a couple of times. You could throw the narrative out that, the scoreboard, the 4-0 wasn't as indicative as to how this match went. There were moments where you're like, oh, Hangzhou could kind of make this a match, but there was never a question in my mind that they weren't going to get swept. So right from the start, you just knew Shanghai was the superior team. They just dominated them in ways that, with Lip doing things on Sombra, playing some Widowmaker, doing some great things, Fleta playing some Genji, Tracer, doing that kind of, doing what he does. They just couldn't handle the aggression and the coordination. And that's one of the things that, they've been playing Sassen occasionally on the off tank. I am not a fan of that. I want QOQ in there. They look way better. But, the spark that is, I just want some consistency. I know they're trying to feel some stuff out before we get to the playoffs with some of these new guys they got in here, new coach, all that kind of thing. But they are no match for Shanghai. And there's not a lot to go over in this match like we did with the San Francisco, Philly match where it was a match. This was not. The closest we got was on 66. We had a 5-4. But the Dragons had a way better time bank, and they just blew them out of the water, really, for the rest of the way. Just to wrap it up on the Apac side, Shanghai, like we said earlier, Shanghai is the best team by leaps and bounds in this region. They had a trip up in the last stage with Guangzhou. I thought Guangzhou was closer, but they've been disappointing lately. I feel like that they've reached their apex, and they're just kind of gonna drop down and then level off somewhere around New York, underneath New York. Honestly, the way New York, even though I didn't like some of the things they were doing with Libero and that, it wasn't terrible. It wasn't optimal. A little bit better than Guangzhou right now. I'm kind of hesitant to say Guangzhou's where they were a month ago, when we were talking Summer Showdown. I thought Guangzhou was a lot better. And they just have not showed up the last couple of weeks. They've just been kind of middling. That leaves Shanghai is much like in NA. You have, here there's a lot less teams because there's one. Shanghai, then you fall off a cliff and you hit Guangzhou and New York, maybe a step from New York to Guangzhou, and then you fall off that cliff from New York and Guangzhou, you get to Hangzhou, who's like in the middle, and then the bottom three teams, Chengdu is probably the best of the bunch right now, and London and Seoul are just clueless at this point. It feels like to me, London had so much potential, but there's not there right now. I don't know if it's coaching or, all of the factors that go in. They're all rookies, and however you want to slice that. Overall, though, Shanghai, they're the one team I think that can beat San Francisco, but I'm not sure. The way San Francisco plays is insanely good. We talked about it yesterday, but Shanghai is fairly similar. They have the knack of, pulling fights out. They don't do some of the little things that San Francisco does, but on a skill level, play style level, they're fairly close. There's just some X factors that I think in San Francisco right now that are better than what they have, other than like if you get into roster depth and things like that. But as far as APAC goes, Shanghai just dominated this tournament. They made it look ridiculously easy. They didn't lose a map, and it really wasn't in question. Once you saw the opening map against New York, I did not feel like they were going to lose a match. I thought maybe New York could take a map from them, but overall, they were just dominant. All right, guys, that's going to wrap it up for our APAC Countdown Cup recap. Everybody out there in YouTube land, thank you very much for tuning in. Appreciate all the likes, all the subscribes, all the views you've been giving me lately. Everybody out there in podcast land, thank you very much. Appreciate all of the listens, and other than that, guys, that's going to do it. We'll hit you coming up later in the week with a preview for week 28. We got new hero pool. I have a lot to say about that. And the schedule coming up, we have a couple of weeks of makeup matches before we get to the playoffs. But until then, guys, this is Misfit. I'm out. Everybody out there, stay safe. Have a good rest of your day, and I will talk to you later.